Welcome back to another episode, 11th, actually. We just hit our first milestone of 10 episodes last time. So we have forced our way onto the issue of number 11. Very excited. We got Tye and myself here. Going over a couple
Edgar
topics.
Martinez episode.
An Edgar Martinez episode. Yeah, that's it. It's cemented. We got a couple topics to go over today. We got some baseball stuff to talk about. What's actually happening? So Logan Gilbert gets the nod. Very exciting stuff, and I called it. By the way, if you've been watching our episodes, I called it. Very excited for Logan Gilbert, but also on top of that, Ty Pete at the spring breakout game, also monster game. Very nice to just at least notice it and just maybe talk a little bit about it. And then we also have another topic that's a little bit more endearing and that we're probably gonna deep dive into a little bit more. But Emerson Hancock potentially getting the nod for the fifth starter with George Kirby going down. Ty, we got some baseball stuff to talk about. Let them know.
Baseball stuff!
All right, so let's talk about probably the biggest news coming out of spring training right now. And that's Logan Gilbert getting the nod to be opening day starter. Probably, I think most people agree he's the best pitcher on the Mariners right now. Probably had the best season of all the Mariners last year. Maybe you could say in shorter stints, Brian Wheel looked a little bit better, but not over the course of the entire season. So I think it's extremely well earned by Gilbert. He's looked good this spring as well. Velo's been good. The stuff has looked good. The new pitches have looked good. So everything looks good and bodes well for his opening day so far. Gavin, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I was actually going to pull up his stats so we can take a look at him. I don't think it's too much in question here. I think he's your best pitcher available, and he's the most proven. What's funny is I actually saw on MLB The Show came out with their rankings of top pitchers and what their scores were, and they had George Kirby at an 89 overall, and he was on the top 10 list, but they didn't have Logan Gilbert on the top 10. So I thought that was kind of funny. It is what it is. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think George Kirby's a great pitcher, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, here's what we got right here. This is coming off of 2024, 208 innings pitched. Sorry, 208.2 innings pitched. Only gave up 148 hits. Are you kidding me? 148 hits only given up. 83 runs, 75 of them earned. Gave up 26 home runs, so a decent amount of home runs were given up. He did make some mistakes kind of over the heart of the plate. 37 walks, not bad. 220 strikeouts. One of the few pitchers in the starting rotation that actually goes above what I think it's 10 K per 9. 9.5, sorry. One of the higher K per 9s, and also the most strikeouts on the starting staff and on the staff. I'm excited for what Logan Gilbert's going to give you, and the interaction that we saw with Luis Castillo being all gassed up. He's gassing him up, saying, "Hey, congrats, man! It's really cool." And just seeing the camaraderie that this pitching staff has built. It's second. Well, maybe it's the pitching staff in general might be second to the Dodgers. I guess you can kind of make that claim. But as far as camaraderie and the guys boosting each other up and just the chemistry that they've built with each other, yeah, I don't think it rivals too many other staffs that I've seen at Major League Baseball. Logan's on par to be an all-star again. Yeah, Ty, go ahead.
Well, I want to see if he can carry over from what he hit. Remember that last start he had last year where he got yanked out of the game early once the Mariners did get eliminated. I think he went 5-2 2/3 or almost 6 innings of like almost no hit baseball, and he was absolutely lights out. So when the lights are on Logan Gilbert, he seems to rise up. I mean, it's the same with with Castillo. When the lights are on him, he's tended to rise to the occasion as well. Kirby to some degree as well. We've seen that in the playoffs, especially when he had to come out of the pen. But Logan Gilbert, I think, he may not be the loudest pitcher. He may not be he may not have the pitcher with the sexiest stats to look at, or like the certain tool that you look at and say, oh, he's elite in this regard. But he gets the job done, and he's been getting the job done for 4 years now. And I congratulations to him on getting the nod. I think it's well earned. I think it's well deserved, and he very well could be the ace of this team for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, almost Zach Wheeler type.
Yeah. He does remind me a lot of like Tyler Glasnow, Jacob deGrom. Got kind of similar profiles and hopefully longevity of career. I know Jacob deGrom's been battling some stuff, but the longevity of his career, he's had some really solid years since he played. So I'm very excited to see him take the throne, if you will. He's now big dog. He's now big dog in the cage, and it's very exciting to see where he's going to go and where he's going to take this, because I think he's earned it. I think he's going to make a name for himself at that elite
how many
level.
years did Felix have the opening day nod in a row? Wasn't it like 10 or 11 years in a row?
That's a good question. Do you want
pretty ridiculous? I just wonder. I know Logan Gilbert's 27, 28 now, right? 27, I think.
Yeah.
Played most of this year is 27, heading almost 28. So like, I don't think he'll get that same number of opening day nods. But the guy has put himself in a situation where he for Logan Gilbert, it's not like it came out of nowhere, right? It's been progressive getting better, progressive getting better, progressive getting better, adding the pitch here, tinkering with the pitch there, and it's just progressively getting better to where we are now versus guys like Kirby. He came out with his elite command. Guys like Wu came out with his elite VAA, right? Guys like Miller came out with his elite fastball. He's just been steady, but with being steady, he's also steadily getting better along with that. And I think that's something that could help maybe, give him a little bit of extra longevity too, right? Where it's maybe a little bit less volatile with whether or not he's relying on one tool like a VAA or like a command or like one fastball. Where as long as he's consistently getting better, I think he's putting himself in a situation to probably be your opening day starter for the next probably 4 or 5 years.
I think that's 100%. I think that's where he's going. I think he's got the next anywhere from 3 to 6 years locked up for that. Now, granted, anybody, your Angel CJ could you're gonna have to pay him. Hello, we got money that needs to be put on the table. You also have guys like potentially Ryan Sloan in the future, your Angelo CJ in the future. Do they surface and are they elite? But for the foreseeable future, he looks like he has at least 3 to 6 years. Kind of, big man on campus. I looked it up. Ty, I got a trivia question for you. Over under 10 opening day starts for Felix Hernandez.
Over. I was saying it's like 11 or 12 is my thought.
Oh, that's a good one. It's 11. He has 11.
Okay.
Now, granted, there's one. Here's another trivia question for you. If you get it wrong, we'll take it out. There's an opening day starter in the mix that is not Felix Hernandez between 2007 and when was his last year? 2018. There's an opening day starter in there.
Give me the year.
Yeah, 2008. I did not know.
He came mid-season.
I knew this because in 2008 I was paying attention, but I forgot this.
No clue.
Eric Bedard.
Give it to me.
Was the
Eric
Eric
Bedard.
Bedard
Oh
was
my
the
God.
opening day starter. I knew he got an opening day start. I forgot that had happened until I happened to see it. I thought
I
that
thought
was
Felix's
outside
were
of the realm.
consecutive. So was that Felix's were consecutive then? Oh
No,
no, that
so
would be before Felix came in. Okay, yeah.
well, no. So Felix had 2007, and then
Okay.
Eric Bedard 2008, and then from 2009 to 2018 was back to Felix.
Oh, okay.
So Eric Bedard had one stumble around in 2008 that
Holy
just
shit.
I know, right?
Eric Bedard
Threw me for a loop.
what
Eric
a waste of a
Bedard.
trade.
Eric Bedard, man, we should trade for him back.
Him and Drew Smiley.
Him and Drew Smiley. How many innings for Drew Smiley as a Mariner, by the way?
As a Mariner, 0.
Yeah, over under 1 out.
I'm pretty sure it was 0, right?
It was 0. It was 0 because
Yeah.
it was the World Baseball Classic. He was lights out, but he
That's
ended up getting
right.
he ended up getting Tommy John.
The
Yeah.
WBC.
Yeah. He was lights out, and we just traded for him. And adios. See ya. So yeah, Logan Gilbert.
But yeah, I think Logan Gilbert has absolutely earned the opening day nod. You could have made the argument for Luis Castillo just out of age and veterancy, but like, yeah. When you look back at the last season that they had, it's clear Logan Gilbert was your best pitcher last year.
And I think Kyle raised a good point too. There was all the trade speculations with Luis Castillo. This would have been a way to say, "Hey, man, we love you. You're a Mariner. Sorry for putting you through the ringer this past offseason, but you're getting the opening day nod. We love you." But it really does seem like the camaraderie and the chemistry that this pitching staff has built in the kind of short amount of time that Luis Castillo's been, a Mariner. Brian Wu has been up at the top level. Bryce Miller has been up at the top level. It seems like they've really built a chemistry that John Stanton can't afford. Moving forward.
There's a degree of which I don't feel like it's that important that any of them got this opening day nod over another guy. Like if you were to say, if you were to go to New York and all of a sudden say, well, I mean, before he got hurt, but if all of a sudden Clark Schmidt got the opening day nod in New York, Garrett Cole would be throwing his arms up and going like, "What the are we doing here? Right?
Yes.
What are we doing here?" If you were
I agree.
I guess trying to think of another place right now. There are certain places you go where certain pitchers they need that opening day start to feel like they're that ace, right?
Yeah.
The Mariners don't give me that vibe. I don't get that feeling from them that they're like, I need this to feel like I'm the number one guy. It's team first mentality. It feels like for the pitchers.
That also mixed with most teams have one clear cut.
They do, yeah.
Number one versus the Mariners. I mean, granted, this year they do have a clear cut number one, but at any point in time, Brian Wu could just go off. At any point in time, Bryce Miller could just go off and take that throne. I think because he won it this year, I think 3 to 6 years you could see Logan Gilbert if they can afford him. Because you're gonna have to start paying him.
I don't think he goes in there and throws a hissy fit if next year it's George Kirby and the year following that it's Bryce Miller. I don't think Logan Gilbert is like, oh, I'm not the guy because they got the nod over me. I think it's like, okay, next man up.
No, exactly. My matchups is going to be against some teams number 2, number 3. I'm in. That's cool.
I don't even think it's that. I don't think they think about themselves. I think it's team first for those guys.
Oh, it's definitely team first, but even on a selfish level, now I get to face somebody else's 3 because George has got number 1 and Bryce has got number 2. I got the number 3. I'm actually pretty psyched, and I'm gonna shove it.
Well, so and then you and I had that conversation about if the Mariners can make it to the playoffs, our 3, 4, 5 pitchers match up better than anyone else's 3, 4, 5 pitchers. I will take Brian Wu against Yoshinobu Yamamoto any day of the week. I'll take Bryce Miller against Glasnow any day of the week in a one-on-one matchup.
I
And
yeah.
that's the value that we have right now.
Yeah. I I can get behind saying I don't think that there is a clear-cut winner between Glasnow and him. Again, I guess looking at the scenario, everyone's fully healthy, everyone's fully recovered from whatever injury they're coming from. I think Glasnow could beat. I guess on the other side of that fence, Glasnow can beat any one of our five. Yoshinobu Yamamoto can beat any one of our five in a head-to-head
Any
matchup.
one of our fives
But
can
would I
beat any
be
one of their fives
comfortable?
head-to-head too.
Well, exactly. That's the point. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make is that it's a good matchup
Yeah,
regardless,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
I'm comfortable giving the ball to any one of our five against any one of their five.
If
Um,
it's Shohei on the mound, I have no problem giving the ball to Brian Wu. I have no problem giving the ball to
yeah,
Bryce Miller. I have no problem giving the ball to Luis Castillo. If it's if it's if it's not the Dodgers and it's the Yankees and it's Max Fried on the mound, I have no problem giving any one of those five the ball. No.
yeah. A topic that we didn't think we were going to have to discuss, but because this conversation has kind of led us there, our bullpen kind of stacks up kind of nicely too. Um,
Yeah.
with guys like so Santos threw in a game the other day. I don't think it was pretty, but also, we're not really putting a whole lot of stock into stats. It's more like I think he spiked a couple pitches, and I was like, ooh, maybe maybe we need to, hone that one back in and just kind of figure things out. Brash started throwing his bullpen, and Troy Taylor started throwing his bullpens. So a lot to be excited when your back end of the rotation is starting to get healthy, because last year we didn't have all three of those guys for most of the year. Even Troy Taylor, we didn't get him until later in the year.
I can't remember whose article I was reading. I don't know if it was Shannon Dreyer or Jen Mueller. Who's it was, but they're saying that Brash is up to 90%. So he's throwing about 92 to 94 right now off the mound. And he
Yes,
said he was specifically told to not go above 95 miles an hour.
I think I
So
saw this. I think that was Ryan Divish actually. That and
was it
maybe it wasn't an
Divish?
article.
Okay.
Well, it was Divish's
I read it off a 710
video.
article. That's why I don't think it was Divish. I was reading off a 710 webpage.
Yeah, and I think I saw it off of Divish's videos because he's been doing a really good job
Yeah.
of putting
I'm
out
sure it all
videos.
probably came off the same interview or the
Right.
same
Yeah.
post game / whatever media session. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
like
those
he was
guys,
throwing
yeah.
94 to 95, and he was supposed to keep it under 95, and everything it sounds like is Matt Brash is well on his way. Everything's on schedule for him. So
Yeah, and
that's really, really good. And then
there was
I was go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay, I was listening to another guy talk about Santos's slider. So stuff plus model on that was like a 121, 125 stuff plus model on it. So it's a well above average slider on him. And what
Yeah.
they're saying is that he's getting a little bit extra more spin even in spring training right now than he was in the past. So
Oh, good.
I don't know about what the movement profile has been like in spring training, but if the spin rate's higher, I would assume it's even nastier now than it was when it was a 120
Yeah.
stuff plus pitch. So
Yeah, no, a lot to be excited there. And there was two conflicting, I guess, to go back on the Matt Brash, there was two conflicting schedules of return or ETA. And that was one was the end of April and the other one was June or July, I believe. Um, and so him being at 90 to 94, like kind of being in that window, kind of signals that he'll be closer to the end of April, maybe early May timeframe.
yeah, Depoto and Holland have been pretty consistent in the end of April, late April, early May sort of narrative or last, I think,
Yeah.
since maybe December, they've been on that narrative. So
They've been on that. I know they interviewed Dan Wilson, who threw in a different time frame, but yeah, you just never know. Maybe he
there was
just
someone right at the end of last year who was saying that Brash should be back at around June or July, right? They
yeah.
said that right at the end of last season. It might have been Hollander, and then they came right around. I want to say it was December, maybe in January. It might have been in January. They started talking about this. That's when this talks about late April started to come about.
Well, that's so Dan Wilson was interviewed by somebody, I can't remember. The
Yeah.
guys on Locked On showed the interview, but it was right at the beginning of spring training, so somewhere in like mid-February. And Dan
Mm.
Wilson had conflicting saying, "Oh, it's not until June or July or whatever he said," but everything has suggested that it's
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
towards what Jerry had mentioned and Justin Hollander, that it's going to be
Yeah.
probably end of April. And seeing how he's progressing now, maybe he'll get back to 100% within like 2 weeks. You throw another, but you throw probably another 2 weeks of 100% bullpens, and then you intermix, some live ABs, and then maybe you go to AAA, throw an inning on a rehab stint, maybe two outings in AAA or single A. We've seen guys like Erasmo Ramirez go down to Everett and throw down there, and then boom, he's back up. The question I have on that is obviously Munoz he's probably won the closer job. Is do you put Brash because he's been out for so long? Do you put him in a middle relief spot or a setup spot? First arrival. Do you kind of put him in more? Do you put him in less stressful situations? Because in my opinion,
I think you put him right back into the deep end of the pool. The kid's mentality is he's an attacker,
yeah,
and with that, so you know how we talked about like some guys have stuff and some guys have unicorn stuff. He's got unicorn
yeah,
stuff where that middle
mm,
finger he has
mm,
just doesn't. It's funky. His middle finger is just like it's broke. He's been broken it or something. It's just funky. It's weird. So how he throws that slider is a unicorn pitch, and
yeah.
if he could, even if he's not throwing 98 to 100 again, if he's throwing 94, 96, and he can still throw that slider, he'll still be just as effective, in my opinion. And with his mentality of how he likes to just attack the zone and let pitchers or let hitters try to hit his stuff, he needs to be right back at high leverage.
I think the most important thing is to keep him on schedule more so. And if the situation calls, like if you're up 10-0 and it's his day to throw because he hasn't thrown in like 4 or 5 days,
Yeah, yeah,
I
definitely
think
throw
you
him out
throw him
there.
out
Let
there.
him let
Yeah,
him
I
get
think
the
I
inning.
think you
Yeah,
throw him out there. But also if it's his day to throw and it's a 3-2 game, go get him, buddy. Like
yeah,
let's see the
yeah.
stuff.
There's no
I think
reservations in my mind. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there's any reservations, but I think you keep his schedule consistent for at least a month. Let him get his feet wet. Let him kind of, get back onto a throwing in game, because there's a difference between throwing 100% on a schedule and then throwing in game 100%
I
and going
wouldn't be
against
surprised
competition.
to see him have 50 plus innings at the end of the season. Like, even coming back
Yeah.
early May, I would
Oh,
not
I
be
think
surprised to
he
see him have 50 plus innings.
I think he should be well above the 50 threshold. I think the first month you keep it consistent of every couple of days rather than, oh, hey, we need you back to back days. I would
Yeah.
lay off of that early in the season with him because he's
I
still building stuff. But
think
I think the high leverage, I think you do what the situation calls for the
I think the
first
most innings he's
month.
thrown is as a reliever is like 70 innings. And in
Yeah,
today's game, average reliever I think is around like 60 to 65 innings in
yeah.
a season. So like I said, I still think
I think
that like
he,
once he's back, you're throwing him right into the blender. Go
yeah.
get him, buddy. Go get him.
Yeah, I would say that the situation is what it is. After you get your feet wet, then he's right back into the thick of it as far as like inconsistency in schedule. Maybe he throws, the first month
Well, I'm
you're
assuming he's
keeping him
going to
consistent.
see one or two high leverage situations in rehab stints, right?
I would hope
Where
so,
hey,
but
go out there.
those.
It's eighth inning. We're up by 1 run. Go out there and throw. Right.
Well, if he's in Tacoma, it's 13-12. So it's like, okay, that's your
That's
one
a good
run
point. Yeah.
games, and it's in Salt Lake where the ball friggin' flies.
Right.
But
And
yeah,
that's kind
you're
of why
right.
I would almost hope he would go to Everett. Right. Like
Yeah.
I get it. It's high A ball, but like you should dominate high A players if you're a major league ball player, and so that should help build confidence in you, right? Like
Well,
when you're Alabama and you play, you see Chattanooga for your first for your first football game of the season, you're not doing it because it's supposed to be a competitive football game. You're doing it so you can feel good about yourself, get that confidence,
Yeah.
get that
Well,
confidence.
and Ty, you actually have a really good point about this because we've had several conversations off camera about whether you should send a player to Arkansas or just send him to Everett. I know it sounds like a demotion. Like we talked, I think it was Cole Young specifically that we talked about. If he doesn't break camp, this was probably what, like a month ago when there was a potential
Yeah.
surgence for him to climb to the top, because at the time there was really no second baseman. We didn't know who was gonna be that guy, and if he made a case for it in spring training and kind of pushed the issue, okay, cool. But if he doesn't, do you send him back down to AAA, where numbers on for the hitters are inflated, or do you send him back down to AA, where it's kind of tougher to hit, or do you send him back to low A, where and Ty, if you want to take it away, why send a player to high A versus like Arkansas? It sounds like a demotion.
Yeah, I think if you're expecting the guy to be AAA eventually in AAA eventually, and he's coming off a AA roster like Cole Young did, where he had a pretty decent season. I think it was like 270-ish with like around 730-ish OPS. I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad numbers. And you want to throw him up to AAA, but your high A roster is only an hour up, or your high A team's only an hour up the street. Why not send him up to high A where he should dominate, right? Get a month under your belt up there where he's absolutely dominating the pitchers he should be dominating because he's already done it. Then move him over to AAA, right, and send him all the way halfway across the country to Arkansas. He doesn't have to move that much. It's less of an adjustment for him. And then you're not trying to go from good hitting environment to poor hitting environment back to good hitting environment again. You're staying in a good hitting environment the entire time, but you're setting him up for success in those situations.
Yeah.
Right. He's already proven that he can overcome adversity. We're not asking
Yeah, the
that
stress
of Cole Young
test.
at this point. Yeah. Now we're
The
asking him
stress.
be consistent, clean things up, because you're this close to making the major league roster at this point.
Yeah, the stress test, you're going to get that in the major leagues. You do want to stress test your players at some point in the minor leagues. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think he's already overcome the adversity. I think he's already been stress tested.
He's been a
He's hit
season in Double
against.
A. That's enough to me.
Well, yeah, and I looked up the stats. 271 with 9 bombs last year. The full slash line was 271, 369, 390. So slugging was a little lower, but the slash line itself,
what was the overall OPS? Was like 730, right?
759. Yeah, it was
759. Oops. Okay.
yeah, 759. It was good. It was respectable. He ended up doing well.
Well, and when you do that in Double A ball, where well, I think the OPS average was like 690 or something like that. It's right. That's good. That's good offensive production for Double A, right?
Yeah.
But if you were to put that number in Triple A or High A, you're going to go, oh, that's kind of below average, right? And I think if you stick him back down to Double A again, and if he continues to have those kind of numbers, he's kind of looking at himself like, well, I'm just kind of average,
Yeah.
right? And then and so now you're shoving more adversity in his face that he just doesn't need at this point. He's already gone a whole 3/4 of a season in Double A. Let him now build confidence rather than prove himself.
Well, and another really good point to kind of touch on is I'd like to know how many top pitching prospects are going to be in that league in Everett this year. Because one I do know is going to be there, and that's Brody Brecht. He was a top draft pick for the Colorado Rockies. Their high A team is
both
Spokane.
him and Dollander are still in High A, aren't they?
Dollander is potentially
Dollander goes to Double A. Oh God, they're going to destroy his arm if they push him to the majors right away. Jesus Christ! I know he's got strikeout stuff, but like that's way too early.
It hasn't been decided yet, but he's still. If I'm not, I'll look it up here when I hand the mic back over to you. I'm pretty sure he's still on the roster, and that there's a chance he's pushing for a spot. His numbers were pretty good, but
I guess he did graduate out of the Northwest League last He did
Yeah.
finish double A last year. Never mind. Okay.
Right. He was in double A last year. But I'd be curious to see on potential landing spots. Like, we have your Angelo CJ, who's probably going to end up there at some point this year. I'd like to see kind of who else is in that league. I know the Hillsboro Hops are Arizona Diamondbacks. I think they got a couple guys, coming up that should be in there. But just to kind of throw competition, like if you're on the fence, like, I really don't want to demote him. Well, if we have some good competition, would that kind of ease your mind on saying, okay, he's going to be facing some top pitching prospects? Brody Brecht is 98 plus with one of the nastier sliders, and he's supposed to be, top elite level. Would it ease your mind to know that he's going to play against elite level talent and also in Seattle? So you're going to have that. That's another stress test that nobody really talks about. You're going to have to hit in Seattle area, Everett, in April. And that's a stress test all of its own. And so going out and doing that again, even though he's already done it, what does it look like in 2025?
Well, it's just that since the 2020 season and the reduction of the minor league teams, it seems to be the trend for most organizations now that they store their close to major league ready arms in double A now. And they stick their journeyman arms in triple A, right? Their 28, 30, 32-year-old starting pitcher who's been on 5 different teams, right? Trying to make a major league roster. We'll stick you in triple A. But our guy we drafted, who's developed, who's our third pitching prospect, he's going to stay in double A. He won't even touch triple A. He'll go from double A straight to the majors once he's ready, right? That kind of seems to be the trend right now. and so because of that, I would prefer my best hitters. Yeah, they may go through double A at one point, but then I don't want them seeing those guys again, because a lot of those guys are, I guess best way I could put it, effectively wild, right? Some of them are honing their craft. Like, they're throwing 98 with nasty stuff, but it's going all over the place, right? I'd rather my guy go see 94 from a crafty, veteran in AAA than go back down to AA and see, nasty stuff, but don't know where it's going. Or even better, I'd like him go down to high A, where those guys with the nasty stuff have already graduated, and he's seeing 92 to 95, but mostly just nothing overly nasty, more stuff that's actually major league average. Because let's face it, he's not going to see a Brody Brecht style fastball every single time he steps up to the plate once he makes the majors. He's not. You might see that, once a week, right? And you need to see what other normal stuff looks like, right? And you're going to see that out of the journeyman you see in AAA. You're going to see that out of the journeyman you see, or I guess not the journeyman. You're going to see that out of guys you see coming up in high A. But if you're in AAA, you might be seeing a Brody Brecht, but you also might be seeing a guy who's, one step behind that, throwing 96 and 98 with a slider that moves 20 inches, but it's half time it's in the dirt, half time it's over your head. So
well, and especially the AL West too. I don't think we've talked about this before. I don't think they're chock full of elite starters. I think the elite starters are all, and I wouldn't even classify all 5 as elite, but they're all well above average. They're all at least number 2s on pretty much any team, is the team that he plays for. It's Seattle. And then you have good pitching. I just saw that the full rotation for Sacramento. I'm going to call them Oakland forever. Sacramento's staff is actually pretty good, and then their bullpen's also pretty good too. But I wouldn't say.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how good that staff is in August.
Right? Yeah, that's another point. Is
60% of that staff is gone by the deadline.
Right? Like, are they all gone, or are they making a Billy Bean push this year? I don't know. I'm saying they're frisky, and I know I'm.
I think there's a better chance they win 78 games than there is that they win 68 games.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that they'll be frisky. They'll take some games that aren't necessarily supposed to be taken by them. I think Lawrence Butler he's going to turn a corner. Brent Rooker is going to turn a corner. Obviously, they're playing in a in a Pacific Coast League former stadium where the ball flies. So
I forgot they got Gio Urshela too. Jeez,
they got Gio Urshela. They might be a little better than teams might anticipate. I know some people are saying the dark horse to win the AL West. I won't. It's tough because if you call it now, great on you. I'd like to see how their first month and a half, 2 months go, just to see how they play in Sacramento. I'm very curious on how that team plays in Sacramento and how different it is playing in Sacramento versus playing in Oakland, and playing in kind of a bigger ballpark and no one going to your games.
Who do you think has a better ERA at the end of the season, Luis Severino or Luis Castillo?
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to go. With
I
Luis
do not think
Castillo.
Severino is going to come even remotely close to reproducing what he did last year at all.
Well, I think I take the ballpark factor into. I think that's the leading.
The Mets is
case.
just as much of a pitcher's park as the. Well, I guess it's not the O.co anymore. Never mind.
Yeah. But it's like when you take in Luis Castillo pitching in Seattle versus Luis Severino pitching in. We don't know what those MLB stats. I'd have to lean towards what the known is, and what the known is that Luis Castillo pitching in Seattle equals more success than unknown. That's kind
Luis
of
Severino
my
had a
logic on that.
3.92 ERA in New York last year. 3.92, not bad.
Yeah,
but to me, the Mets is one of the better parks to pitch in, right? If you're not, it's not Yankee Stadium, it's not Small America Ballpark, right, or Small Park, Great American Small Park. It's not any of those.
Yeah,
it's one of the better places to pitch, and he only had a 3.92 ERA. So I don't know that, because it was about 20 million he got, right? About 20 million a year AAV, I think, from Oakland. I don't think he's going to live up to that contract.
I think for what they need, he's going to live up to that contract. If they're trying to be if they're legitimately trying to be competitive this year, which it looks like they're trying to do, I think he lives up to the contract for them. I think he is their. Is he their opening day? I didn't see if they named him their opening day, but if he's their opening day, then yeah, I think you had to pay him. You got to pay somebody to be your opening day.
It was
if you don't have an opening day. 367.
367. I don't know that he's worth $22 million a year. I don't.
Yeah,
I really.
Yeah, you have to overpay because there wasn't really. I mean, you had Corbin Burns available, but I don't think Oakland. I'm gonna call him Oakland forever.
Just keep calling him Oakland. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. Yep. It's Oakland. You're not paying Corbin Burns. They don't have Corbin Burns money. They just don't. They're not competing on that level. So they're Billy Beaning it, and they're looking for somebody that's a little bit more in their price range to be their number one. So yeah, that's
my prediction for Luis Severino end of the mid-season with the A's. Let's say July 15th. I'm gonna say he's like 3-7 with a 4.6 ERA and like a 1.35 WHIP. I don't. He will be tradable because people are going to look back and say, well, he's only half a season removed from what he was with the Mets.
Yeah,
but that to me is the only reason they picked him up was like they're going to trade him away mid-season for prospects, right? The Oakland way, the Rays way. You sign a guy mid-season for not what he's going to give you for the full season, but for what you think he's going to give you for half the season, so you can get prospects out of it, right? And I think that's why he was brought in. I don't think they brought him in specifically to be anything good. And the team that takes Luis Severino is probably going to take all his money, which, when you look at it that way, if he's going to Miami, if he's going back to New York, if he's going if he comes to Seattle, if he's going to San Diego, he might be worth that money, right? That $22 million a year, because he might put up like a 3.5 ERA, 175 strikeouts style season.
Yeah.
but
I
you
think
send him to Pittsburgh, you send him to Philly, you send him to somewhere else.
I think with
I'm not sure
where
he's a starter.
Yeah, I think with where the A's are, again, they're not going to overpay in their terms to go get Corbin Burns. They just don't have, I don't think, that capital, and they don't want to lock anybody up.
Let's just be clear. They did not pay Luis Severino because they want to win ball games and they want to be competitive. They pay Luis Severino to be above the threshold they need to be, so they can still get revenue sharing.
I think they're going to try and be winners this year. I'm not saying they're going to win the World Series. I think they're going to try and compete for the AL West because they just saw what happened to the Astros, and they have a team that's kind of frisky. Is the best way to put it.
But I mean, they signed Luis Severino before any of the Astros stuff ever went down. Like Luis Severino was one of the first major transactions to go down this offseason.
That is
like
true.
To me, it was a clear, because when they signed Luis Severino, they were like $500,000 right over that threshold.
Yeah,
and they've not made any major moves since. Like it was specifically made to be like, let's meet this threshold so we can actually make the 50-odd, $60-odd million at the end of the season from revenue sharing, right?
Yeah. I'm very curious with everything that's happening in Vegas, with Nashville and Portland really pushing the issue for their stadiums and their renderings, and saying that they're going to put boots on the ground in 2027, at least in Portland. They're saying, hey, we're going to put boots on the ground and we're going to build this as long as provided that there's a team. I'm wondering if they're not pushing the issue for the relocation to happen there. And also the Rays.
By all means, send him to Nashville. Get John Fisher out of the AL West. Screw that dude.
Yeah.
He is bad for baseball. Send him somewhere else.
Here's what's crazy. Those two cities could have a team with zero expansion, because the Rays, all the owners apparently, on MLB Trade Rumors reported this, saying that most of the owners have asked the Rays owner to leave and to sell the team. Also, it came out that there's no plans to rebuild Tropicana Field. There's no plans. They're not rebuilding, which tells me something's going to happen. Something's got to give. And here's the thing. I've been to Tampa. I like the city of Tampa. And we just saw Savannah Bananas played in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers football stadium, and they sold it out. There's fans there. You should probably give them something, and not the field or indoor stadium that you gave them. I think they deserve something decent, and they have a chance to really do something in Tampa. But if that is happening, if they're selling, and that Tropicana Field, there's just no plan for that to make a return. Well, Nashville seems like a very, very good destination because it's East Coast to East Coast, or East to East, at least. It stays on the East. Yeah. It doesn't rupture too much with alignment and everything. And then you look at Oakland going to Portland. It helps out a lot of different things. It gives
when I
Seattle
say the Great American South, do you consider Florida the South? Like Miami? Do you consider Miami the South?
I don't, but I know, like, if you're talking college football, like Florida's in the SEC.
Yeah, but you see what I mean? Like the South, they've really only got Atlanta.
Yeah.
If you're a good old country boy in the
Nashville,
South, you've got one team to root for. Really, that's about it. Maybe two if you like Texas, but really there's only the Braves, right? Put another team in the South. New Orleans,
Nashville is probably the best.
Somewhere Kentucky. There are plenty of places in the South to put a new baseball team.
Nashville makes the most sense. I think if you look at the cities that are growing, the baseball tradition that's already there in Nashville, also with the relevant baseball history with Vanderbilt being a powerhouse in college baseball and everything, and then also it's turning into the East Coast Vegas, right? With everything that you got going on downtown. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to put a team in Nashville. New Orleans, I think Charlotte is another place that you could talk about. Raleigh, is a smaller town, but I've heard a lot of rumors about Raleigh trying to make the push for that. So don't count them out, but I wouldn't put them as my number one. Also, I've lived in Wilson, North Carolina, about hour outside. I love Raleigh. I think Raleigh would be an awesome town to have a baseball team. But I think if you're talking in the Carolinas, Charlotte makes a little more sense because you have the Carolina Panthers did that really good thing of just saying Carolina because it's so close to South Carolina. You can, integrate both states. Yeah, outside of that, it's tough because like Birmingham's not quite a big enough city. I'm trying to think of
Maybe
like bigger
Mobile.
cities that are in the South. Mobile already has the Bay Bears, the Double A team. I'd have to check out their standings or not standings, their attendance, and just kind of see what that looks like.
Yeah, I
But
mean, Nashville's got the Nashville sound. Would not be that hard to.
Oh yeah, right. Like it's not
uproot a Double A
I'm just
team.
curious on what that looks like from a full scope perspective and just like the area of people that would come to watch the game, all that stuff. But you're right. Like there's no big cities, but there's above average cities that could really take off. Birmingham is a big baseball town. And it's got a lot of area. Like you'd win the entire state of Alabama if you put a team in Birmingham because it is kind of centralized. The city is at least. But I'm trying to think of like maybe
it just baffles me that baseball, which to me is predominantly dominated by kids from, Georgia, Texas, Florida. I mean, you get some scattered around the U.S., but like the South tends to produce a disproportionate number of good baseball players.
Yeah.
And yet you've got one baseball team down there, professional baseball team. Yeah, I mean, you've got Tampa Bay and you've got Miami. But are those really teams you consider to be part of the South?
Right.
I don't know.
So I do want to switch gears.
South, speaking of the South, we could switch gears because the Georgia kid that we could talk about, right? Going off in the game, Tye Pete. So
Tye Pete, man,
and that's what I mean. You got a kid from Georgia right there who's only got one team he's allowed to root for, essentially, growing up. And
thankfully it's in his backyard.
He's from Georgia, right? But like,
but yeah, I mean, North Carolina. I looked at the map. There's a map that I think it was College Baseball Hub put out of major league players and per state, like how many players from each state. Obviously, California, Texas, Florida. It's not even close. Those are the top three. Behind it, Georgia. Georgia was, I think, had 60 some odd players. Alabama is pretty high. North Carolina, like if you're playing in North Carolina, your two closest teams are going to be Atlanta or they're going to be Washington D.C. So those are your two closest teams. And another team in the South makes too much sense. Nashville is at the top of that list, in my opinion. I know, Tye, you lived out there, so you understand how big baseball is out there. And
yeah, they would love it out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be huge. Virginia doesn't really have a good location that you could put it at because you already have Washington, D.C., and you already have Baltimore, and the other cities in Virginia would be tough. I'm not saying that you couldn't do it in Norfolk or anywhere over or Richmond. Probably not. I put Raleigh above those cities, but
you can even do Louisville. I mean, like, come on, Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville is a perfect city to have for baseball. Like, come on.
Yeah, Louisville would be a great one.
There's plenty of good places in the South. Then, but yeah, let's transition on.
We did need to transition. I did actually, before getting to our last topic, I did want to mention because it just came out today that Mitch Haniger is dealing with some stuff. He hasn't played in any games for over a week now, and it looks like everything's shaping up for Mitch Haniger to start the year on the IL, which pushes to my next point. Rowdy Tellez is probably going to open up the year on the opening day roster, and I, for one, could not be happier. Tye, you mentioned it earlier off camera. What's your thoughts on Rowdy Tellez and why he's being given this opportunity, or potentially? It's not official, but you kind of see things are being written in the stars right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rowdy does way more than what his bat does in contributing towards a winning baseball team. He's known to be a great leader in the clubhouse, a great glue guy, a guy who helps motivate guys, who helps keep guys on track, who helps keep guys accountable. Um, he's also, from what I understand, if you ever listen to any of his interviews, he's a pretty congenial, easy to get along with, kind of a funny dude. So he's a great presence to have around. And Mitch Haniger, if he's going to go on the IL, he's not the guy you want to have around. He's a great leader, great presence, great mind, hard worker, good work ethic, all that stuff. But if you can have a guy that can also produce, and Rowdy does that from the left side, he produces. It may not be tremendous production, but it's 20 home run average season, 20 home run possible pop season, and then 225, 235 average-ish, right, with close to 700 OPS. I think he gives you a threat of power, and that in and of itself may be enough to force his one to lineup when you got a guy like Haniger going on to the DL. The question I have, though, or I guess the IL, excuse me, it's the injured list now. What the question I have with Tellez is that he's fairly positionless, right? He's first base DH, and does that limit the Mariners in being able to sort of rotate guys around? Because now, if you want his bat in there, does that mean Solano has to play the field? Or, if you're going to DH him, does that mean someone else can't then, you're not going to be able to sub out later for someone else because you need that DH slot for Rowdy Tellez? I think he's worth that compromise, but it is something you look at and say, well, you have to make that decision. So
it's a problem that you have to address at some point this year, or maybe it might handcuff you at certain times of the year, right? Like if he's playing first base and Luke Raley's DH and someone goes and he gets injured or whatever, now you're okay. Like you're handcuffed a little bit. So it does potentially give you some handcuffing scenarios that maybe you don't want late in games, maybe you don't want in certain situations, or maybe you just don't want in certain matchups. I agree, and I also agree that I think it's worth the risk going into it because of what he does, what he provides, what he can actually do on the field. But the reason why we're here having this conversation about Rowdy Tellez is because he forced the issue. And that's one of the things that Tye said before when we were off camera. Tye had mentioned he forced the issue. If he came in and Joey Gallowed it and went 2 for 20 and had 100, I think it's there's no question you're keeping Mitch Haniger. There's nobody you're giving Mitch Haniger those DH spots and opportunities off the bench to try and muster up something. See if you have anything left in Mitch Haniger before finally letting him go. But now it's a potential that Mitch Haniger starts on the IL. And if Rowdy Tellez takes off, you might actually just let go of Mitch Haniger, which has been rumored by several different people since the beginning of last year's offseason. So yeah, I think Rowdy Tellez, the reason why we're having this conversation right now, has forced the issue. Not only what he's done in spring training, because we all know the stats are just kind of, they're just there. It's just nice to see his swing and what he provides in spring training, that he's provided that power in spring training as well. But you know what you got from him over the last couple of years. And he's still in that realm to produce, something similar.
I think personality and leadership qualities alone, he could have gone out there and gone 0 for 50 in spring training.
Yeah.
I think just by presence alone, he deserves to be on this roster. Like
100%.
There are certain guys that you just can't account for. Your box score is not going to account for how they contributed towards this team winning, right?
Yes.
It's only going to show, he went 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 5, 0 for 4, but he kept the locker room exciting. He kept the clubhouse happy. He kept guys focused. He kept guys accountable. That's the stuff that Rowdy Tellez does.
Yeah.
That I think this team has been missing to some degree.
Yeah. Well, and does his 0 for 4 give Julio one extra hit a week? Something like that. Something to where the trade-off might actually be worth it, because maybe that one extra hit a week is a game tying home run or a game winning base hit, something along those lines. Where I know it sounds weird that we're throwing out trade-offs like that, but it's more of a he's the glue behind the scenes getting these guys to have that confidence at the plate or just have that extra trust in each other because he's building the trust. And I think you got that from Justin Turner last year. I think you really saw the team gel and move forward. And I think he was the perfect guy that you needed when you got Randy Arozarena, because Randy Arozarena obviously made his statements on, the transition was tough, coming from a team that you had your rookie season with. I believe he was with the Rays for most of his career. I think he might have been traded in the minor leagues or something like that. But for the most part, he's been a Ray. And he was more so, he was just, hey, I'm leaving my life in Tampa. I'm coming to Seattle. What does this mean? What's going on? And I think now you're going to see a different Randy. But Justin Turner was kind of that glue. And you saw the offense spike. And there was a couple different factors in that. Dan Wilson comes in. Edgar Martinez makes his way back. This year, now you have Kevin Seitzer, which I've seen a lot of different interviews citing, and I apologies, I don't have the exact interviews. I want to give credit where credit is due, but Kevin Seitzer, I believe Couch GM had one that was, quoting Kevin Seitzer saying, it's like I found my long lost twin brother when he has conversations with Edgar Martinez. Their approaches at the plate, the way that they teach hitting and the way they go about hitting is very synonymous, very similar. And it's exciting to know that that's what's going on leading up into the season when you saw how last season ended. That mixed with, guys coming back and getting a second year, Mitch Garver getting a second year. Can he get worse than last year? No. So if he gets any better, that's a huge positive. Yeah, right. But if he gets any better, even just a couple extra hits here and there, even just a clutch home run like he did against Atlanta last year, it's worth that extra push. And I think you're going to see the offense get just that much better. Now, is it enough to make the playoffs? Only time will tell. But go ahead.
I don't think Rowdy Tellez is a major league average bat. He's slightly below major league average, right? He's not, he's not the guy you want to have out there every single 162, right? But he has other qualities that make you want to have him on your roster. But we talk about with guys like Kevin Newman, guys like Brendan Rodgers, who your 7, 8, 9 guys, they extend your lineup. They make your lineup longer. Rowdy Tellez as your 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 guy is probably better than your opponent's 6, 7, 8, 9 guy that he lines up against.
Yeah.
Your 1, 2, 3, 4 may not be as good as, say, the Dodgers 1, 2, 3, 4 in the lineup. But if you got Rowdy Tellez batting 7th, he's probably better than the Dodgers 7th hitter. Right? Or just as good. And that's where you can sort of win in the aggregate when maybe you can't throw out a $300 billion lineup like the Dodgers do,
Well, and a good stat that I'd like to see is RBI per game, because I think his RBI per game will look good at the end of the year, being in the bottom 3, right? If he's batting 6, 7, 8, or 9, or I don't think he'll ever bat 9, but if he's batting, towards the bottom of the lineup, and he's producing RBI per game at kind of a very good level for that range. Yeah, I think that's worth noting. Like if he has 68 RBI at the end of the year and he only played in 125 games, that's pretty good. That's actually not bad.
How much better is this roster last year if Rowdy Tellez is playing DH all season? A lot better. They probably win 2 extra games. So, yeah. Which means they're in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, especially if you end up with like 150 games from him and 150 games from Luke Raley in your lineup, understandably, they're kind of, Luke Raley can struggle against lefties, and evidence suggests before last year that he wasn't that bad against lefties. You never know if he actually figures something out just while playing the season and just getting more comfortable facing lefties. So I'm very curious on what that looks like. I don't think that'll be necessarily the thing that you see all year. But I did want to pivot to one last topic that we talked about at the beginning of this, and that is George Kirby's going to start the year on the IL. At least that's what's been reported. And so with him going on to the IL, that it looks like it's going to be Emerson Hancock. Ty, what are your thoughts on Emerson Hancock kind of being that guy?
The kid got 12 starts last year, was serviceable. I thought he looked better in his later starts than he did in his earlier starts, which I think bodes well. It means he was maybe correcting some stuff or was able to bounce back, which is what you always want to see. But I have no problem with Emerson Hancock going out there and collecting 5-10 starts while Kirby's recovering. The question I have is, it seems like he's the default, not that there's a competition for that sixth starter. And with all the guys that are going down right now across baseball, to me, it seems like the Mariners need to go out there and get a $1 million arm just in case, because Emerson Hancock, let's say he goes out there and he's lights out. Great. You didn't need that arm. But let's say Emerson Hancock goes out there and he's throwing, 9 ERA stuff. Well, you don't have anyone behind him right now other than, prospects, guys who have never thrown in the majors. So I do like Hancock coming in there and spelling Kirby for however long that needs to be. It just doesn't. It just sort of ticks away at the depth, and then you realize after Hancock, there's just nobody behind him.
Yeah, and they went and got Jesse Hahn and I'm blanking on his name right now, but the lefty Drew Pomeranz. So they got two former guys that have thrown that have started at the major league level, and I see a lot of a potential Tommy Malone out of Drew Pomeranz, and Jesse Hahn I think has just been moved to the bullpen. But you're right, the depth to push, like if we ever have two starters go down, we don't have any answers for that. Like it's going to be Jonathan Diaz, it's going to be Drew Pomeranz, and it's going to be Emerson Hancock. At that point in time, maybe you're looking at Reed Van Scoter. Like you have to really dig deep into our system to find what that replacement's going to look like. And just so we're clear, Spencer Turnbull, I don't know how much it'll cost, but Spencer Turnbull is still a free agent. At this point in time,
when all these injuries were going down,
day,
Lance Lynn was still available.
Yeah, Lance Lynn is still available, and it makes you wonder: do you take a chance on one of these guys and just like have somebody available just in case something happens? Because right now you don't have any answers, and if Jerry has answers for me, apologies.
You have bodies. But you have
bodies.
few bodies with major league experience.
Yeah.
Right. You've got Logan Evans, you've got Reed Van Scoter, you've got Jimmy Joyce, you've got Michael Morales. Now, great, you've got all those guys down there, but the Mariners have I don't want to say they've lucked out, but the chances of the pitching prospects you've seen in Double-A constantly hitting and being good, I think the Mariners have hit more than they've missed on those guys, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how long you can trust that trend, right? I guarantee not every single guy that comes up to the Mariners is going to be as good as Bryce Miller or Brian Wu, right?
Right.
It's not every single guy. And so when that's the case, you kind of want that guy who you can rely on to be, hey, maybe he doesn't go out there and throw lights out stuff, but maybe he's only giving up 3 runs in 5 innings, the Lance Lynn's, right?
Yeah.
And I'd rather live with that than the risk of going like, well, if I throw Michael Morales out there and it's too early, now he's giving up 9 runs in 2 innings, right? And possibly on top of that, I've ruined his confidence,
Yeah.
There's risks in calling someone up, a guy who's got no experience versus going out and getting, quote, the safer option.
Well, and part of that too, we've seen it happen, and just last year with Emerson Hancock, we've seen it happen to where he'll call him up for 1 or 2 starts and then pull him back down, and then he'll call up Jonathan Diaz for 1 or 2 starts, and then he'll pull him back down, and so we'll try and mitigate I guess whatever problem you're trying to face here with only 1 or 2 starts. But I feel like that's when you call somebody up and they have a good or bad outing and you pull them back down, isn't that demoralizing? I don't know. Like, as a former player
To
myself,
me, it would
I feel like
maybe
that
not
would be
demoralizing, but disruptive.
disruptive and also demoralizing. I just got to the top and I had a bad outing and now I got sent back down. It's a little bit demoralizing, and understandably, that's why I'm not a professional baseball player, because it takes a different mindset to kind of overcome that and to do that. But you don't want to force that issue of just bringing somebody back down. And so it sounds like that could happen with Brandon Garcia. He calls him up for 1 or 2 outings, good or bad, sends him back down. We saw it with Jared Kelenic. Called him up for 20, 30 at bats, 40 at bats, whatever it was, pulled him back down. Called him up, 60 at bats, pulled him back down. And I could totally see that happening with if you lack depth. I could totally see that happening with Brandon Garcia, Michael Morales, and Reed Van Scoter, and all the guys that we mentioned, calling them up for 1 or 2 starts, good or bad, pulling him back down. And it just doesn't seem like you're prepared to go into this season with. It just seems like, how do I phrase this?
Well, so here's
you're unprepared.
You went into the season looking at last season going, "Hey, we got 5 starters who did 150 of our starts were between 5 dudes." Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
We're gonna replicate that this season again too. I
Yes.
guarantee it.
We can
No,
copy
you
and
ain't.
paste
No, you
that.
aren't effing gonna do that. Right?
I mean,
And they went
the
in there going,
numbers
"Oh,
are
all we need is Emerson Hancock as our extra depth and we'll be fine." You can
yeah,
never have enough starting pitching.
right. And they like Jerry, take a bite out of your own apple, man. You just did it with, hey, you do this every year with relief pitchers. I'm not saying you need to go out and get 15 starting pitchers that have MLB experience. I don't think that's the argument here. But to have 2 or 3 that have that MLB experience that can actually help you. Drew Pomeranz, in my opinion, is not that guy. Um, I would like to think he's kind of in his Tommy Malone era, and maybe he comes in. But Tommy Malone was such a unique specimen. If I could
It felt
think
like
of a
though he
better word,
came in and pitched games that were like because the whatever reason they wanted to keep the rotation on a certain schedule,
yeah,
and Tommy Malone came up to fill in 1 game, and that was his whole purpose, right? And then he got sent back. He would get DFA'd again,
you
and he
get
would and the
DFA'd, and
same
then
just so we don't disrupt
the
our schedule with our pitchers. You're going to come and pitch this 1 game. It wasn't
the
guys were going
problem
down and
was
Tommy Malone was pitching. It was
well,
scheduling stuff.
see, the problem was he was actually good. He came up and he would go 5 innings and only give up like 1 or 2 runs, and he was good. I don't see
Throwing
that happening
87.
with throwing 80. Yeah, I just don't see that happening with Drew Pomeranz. I see him filling up the zone, maybe. Like if he's looking
Get
for
hit
somebody that could
around.
just spot it. But yeah, I think he's gonna get hit around, and I think it's not gonna go in your favor. Granted, I did say the same thing about Tommy Malone back then. I was like, oh, they're gonna start Tommy Malone. All right, well, let's see what happens here. And sure enough, Tommy Malone ended up doing well. So maybe I'm wrong, and I should give Jerry more credit when it comes to evaluating pitchers than I do. But it's just like when you have Drew Pomeranz and Emerson Hancock and Jesse Hahn, if he's even going to start, like those are your only MLB arms for starters beyond the 5 that you have,
Yeah.
and you're already starting on a bad foot. One of your starters is going to start off on the IL. You're already
I mean,
starting in a negative window.
think about how stupid Cashman would feel right now if he listened to all his fans who a week and a half ago were saying, trade Stroman, trade Stroman, trade Stroman, get something else and trade Stroman. You can't have him starting pitching because now Garrett Cole's down. You're pretty you're pretty I almost cussed her. You're pretty darn
Yeah,
happy you still got Marcus Stroman in your back pocket
yeah,
as a New York Yankee. You can't have enough starting pitching. And right now the Mariners don't they have just enough starting pitching. You can never
yeah.
have enough though.
And it's just like, okay, so Spencer Turnbull's available. You got Lance Lynn available. I think those guys, in all honesty, as much as I'd want them, I'll admit that they're probably a little too expensive for where the Mariners currently are budget wise. But you can also go trade for maybe like a Marlins starter. You can also go trade for even Even Colorado Rockies starter.
I
I
mean,
think you
you
and I
tell
had
me Ryan,
talked
you wouldn't.
multiple.
I would trust Ryan Feltner over Lance Lynn, to
Yeah.
be entirely honest, for
Oh
over
yeah.
6 starts.
I think the one part you get into there is I think Ryan Feltner still has a lot of control, and you're not paying him a whole lot, so he's actually valuable to.
Is
You
he?
have to look up where he's on Spo Track, but I think he's still under the rookie contract, or maybe he's under the first 5 years of his tenure. But the controllability is still there for them.
He's a perfect trade target right now because he's ARB eligible next year, and there's no way the Rockets are going to want to pay him his ARB number.
So there's, I mean,
That's a perfect trade
there's a
target. Like,
part. So there's a good trade target right there. Go get him, and what would it cost you because of his controllability, and because if he's not pitching in Colorado. In all honesty,
maybe a
Colorado
Michael
knows,
Morales for Ryan Feltner straight up.
and it would be worth it. In my opinion, it'd
Yeah.
be worth it. And I think that would be worth it for them too, because if you can't find somebody like a Dollander that's going to light up the radar and gas everybody by, if you're not going to miss barrels, you need to be able to create the least exit velo off, I guess is the best way to put it. You need to miss barrels by the best standard, either completely miss barrels and have the highest whiff percentage, or miss barrels and just have guys that just like pop it straight up, or pound it into the ground. And Michael Morales answers that on the other side of it. He's not Dollander. He's not going to strike a ton of guys out, but he's on the other side of it where he's not going to walk a ton of guys, but he's going to create a lot of ground ball situations and be able to get outs in other ways. So I don't know. I think that's a pretty good trade target, and you get somebody with MLB experience. You get somebody out of Colorado that needs a second chance right now. And sure enough, it's on an ARB eligible year for Ryan Feltner. It is a contract year for him, so this would be huge for Ryan Feltner too to get out of Colorado.
Well,
Also,
you're telling me that Pittsburgh doesn't have a guy that they're trying to offload. So when Bubba Chandler gets called up, like, come on, like they've got 3 guys in AA right now that are all, or AAA and AA, are Ashcraft, Chandler, and what's his name? They're all pushing their way up the roster. They don't have the roster spots for some of these kids yet. So there are guys you can go out there and get. I kind of look at it and say, well, why haven't we seen any movement? It's not just the Mariners; it's across the league. You're seeing only Lance Lynn was the only name I saw of guys being talked to once a lot of these starting pitchers started to go down. And I think it was with the Cubs. I thought he was talking to, but I didn't see any movement on that. But it was just like all these starters are going down. No one's going out there to try to backfill the depth. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Did want to close this one out with any final thoughts from tonight's conversation, and just, I guess, state of the Mariners in general through our last, because we're heading into our last week of spring training. So Ty, I want to kick it over to you. Any final thoughts for the episode?
Yeah, final thoughts. Mariners pitching still looks phenomenal. Although we nitpick this team like crazy, I think there's still a lot to be optimistic for. Rowdy Tellez is just fun, so I think that adds a lot of optimism too. So yeah, I think final thoughts is just to be from today is just to be very, very optimistic, even though there are some things that you look at and say, oh wow, that's not good. There's still a lot to be optimistic about.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and just say the same thing that I've said in I believe it was our last episode that we talked. You look at this team in a vacuum from just last year to this year without having the history of the Seattle Mariners. Well, they fell just short of the playoffs, and I think they're primed, and a lot of teams lost some good players from around the AL West. I think they're primed to make a good playoff run. And I'm sorry, Jerry, I don't care what you do in the offseason. You're not going to take away how excited I am for opening day, and for the optimism I always have every year. Even in, like, what was it, 2011, when they didn't win too many games. You're not going to take away that optimism. I'm fired up for opening day. You should be too. If you're down here in Arizona, make sure to get out to the games. I'm actually headed to the game tomorrow. By the time this actually drops, the game will already been played. But the Mariners take on the A's tomorrow at Hohokam. Wanted to make sure I said that right. Out in Mesa. So I'm excited to get out there, meet with a couple other content creators and everything. And yeah, just we have our stuff at the bottom there. Definitely check out our stuff on every platform. Whatever's your favorite. If you like getting on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you're not a YouTube person, we want to reach you as best as possible. Also, like, subscribe, comments. Honestly, if you don't like or subscribe, if you're commenting, it gives us more stuff to kind of talk about in the episodes and address what you want to hear more about. So any way you engage with our stuff, we really truly appreciate it. And we actually just we hit a semi milestone. We have hit 80 subscribers on YouTube, which is kind of our biggest goal, is to get through YouTube and kind of grow in that direction. So we hit 80 subscribers and we're excited, and we want to thank all 80 of you that out there that are following us and watch our stuff regularly, not regularly. We don't care. We just really appreciate any support that you guys give us. Well, for Up West Sports, that's Tye. Nope, that's Tye. This is Gavin. Just remember, life's too short. Gas up your boys.